That song just came onto my computer, and I was just listening to it and just letting God speak to my heart, you know. And the amazing thing about the song is it starts out by saying, "In my wreckage, you know, in the middle of my darkness, you reached out and you picked me up." And that's kind of where I want to start today, before we dive in. If you look at this world that we live in, it's a dark, dark place. You know, there's a lot of hurt people, there's a lot of broken people, there's a lot of disease, there's a lot of disappointment, there's a lot of things that just, when you look at it, it just hurts you deep inside. And taking it to the next level, if you look at our lives, every single one of us, you can look at different parts of your life. There's some times that your life just gets very messy. It's a mess. You don't know necessarily how to fix it. You don't know what necessarily happened. But there's just some points in your life that you realize things are just kind of all tangled together, right? And the thing about our life and our mistakes, right, is every time we make a mistake, every time we start to sin, every time we do things in our hearts and our minds that we know is wrong, imagine trying to be close to a perfect God who doesn't sin. No matter how many good things you do, we continue to mess up in this broken, dark world. And there's nothing that we can do on our own to say, "I've done everything I can, God, I'm great. I deserve to be with this perfect, holy God." And this is where the story begins, because in the middle of this dark world, in the middle of this dark life, in the middle of our brokenness, comes the light of the world in heaven. Away from all the hurt, away from all the hatred, from the racism, from the rejection, from the betrayals, from the disease, from the death. And He looks down on this earth, and He sees us in the middle of this dark, hurtful place. And He decides He's going to leave the place where He gets all the glory He deserves, all the honor He deserves, all the authority He deserves, every good thing up in heaven, to come down to this dark and broken, messy life on a rescue mission. He comes to come and chase after us. And He goes from being honored and glorified to being spit on and doubted and cursed at, and everything that He did to love people and to bring people closer to Him. People made up 100 different excuses on why Jesus was messed up. But still, Jesus pursued us and He chased us. And He was willing to do whatever He could to rescue us from this darkness. He was willing to do whatever He could to free us from the bondage of sin in our lives, from the bondage of death in our lives. And in John 8, He's speaking to a crowd of people. There's really holy Pharisees, religious people. There's broken people just like us. There's people who just don't know who He is. And He looks at them and He says, listen, He goes, "Whom the Son sets free is free indeed." And you might be sitting here and you say, "Jesus, you're saying you're setting us free. Free from what? There's still hurt in this world. There's still disease in this world. I'm still a mess. You know, I still sin and I still make mistakes." But Jesus is looking down on us and He's saying, "I'm setting you free from condemnation." He says, "I didn't come into the world to judge the world and to send you all to where you belong." He says, "I've come to you to save you." We're free to live a life where we can run into God's arms without the pain of guilt and shame weighing us down. We're free to live a life that everything we do will glorify Jesus, instead of fall victim to the desires and to the hurts and to the burdens of this world. We're free to run the race with perseverance, without anything that's entangling us or sin that's tripping us up. We're free to live the life that God has designed us to live. The righteous life. He created us each for a purpose, and He's setting us free to run this life, to live for what He created us for. That's the imagery that I want you guys to keep in your hearts and your minds as we talk today. That Jesus loves you so much that He was really willing to give up everything. He gave up His position in heaven and went down to suffer with us. He gave up every bit of Himself. He literally got crucified and whipped and beaten, and every ounce of His blood got drained from His body because He loved you so much. Because He wanted to set us free. I'm going to start today by telling you guys a story about one of my close friends who's actually a full-time missionary out in Guam. Okay? The interesting thing was he started off in Korea, and somehow God brought him to Guam and he's the youth pastor at a Korean church in Guam. Talks about how God, his plans, and God fulfills his plans, no matter what kind of crazy turns life takes us. One day he was on a hike with some of his youth kids, and it's a beautiful hike, okay? Right by the rocks along the path, you see there's a beautiful view of the ocean. He said it's breathtaking. And as they go along the hike, there's a part in the hike that's a little dangerous, okay? It's a little too close to the water. But he said, just to view and just something about the water just draws you to the tip of the rocks on the ledge. But what made it even extra crazy that day is that there was a typhoon on the southern part of Guam. So the waves were 12 feet tall. Can you imagine the scenery being on top of a mountain ledge, with the ocean and just these long, huge waves and the sun in the air? And he just kind of got closer and closer, looking over the ledge. And before you know it, a huge wave came out of nowhere, caught him by surprise. And for a second, he thought, oh, okay, I'm fine, I'm in control. Everything's okay. But then that wave picked him up off his feet and swamped him into the ocean. And in the beginning, he was in doubt. He's like, this can't be happening. I can't be in the middle of the ocean with these 12-foot waves that are just pulling me away and further away from the shore. But it became so suffocating. The current was so strong, no matter how hard he fought, he kept getting pushed further and further away from the shore. And imagine these 12-foot waves that just come and sweep over you, and you're trying to get to the top of the wave. And he said he couldn't catch his breath. He said he had to put his hand in the air, so when the wave receded just enough, he could jump up and catch a breath. And this went on for hours. Okay, the people that he was with sprinted out of the woods to go try to find help. But he was in the middle of this monstrous wave storm, and he just felt like he was suffocating to death. No matter how hard he fought, and he had motivation sometimes to fight so hard, he would make a little bit of progress, but as soon as he stopped fighting, the waves would just win, and he would start to drown. He said at times in that ocean, he just felt like, I'm just going to just end it. He said, I'm just going to just let the waves take me down. I'm just going to dive down and just end this suffering. But then he started to think a little bit. He said, if I just give up like this, everything I did in ministry could just mean nothing to these kids. That I just gave up. And I just accepted the hopeless situation. And the crazy thing was, they started the rescue mission to find him. And he's in the middle of the ocean. And these massive waves are drowning him. And a helicopter flies by, but just keeps on flying by. That same helicopter comes back and swarms over his head, and it flies by again. And he's just suffocating. He's suffocating. He doesn't have any more breath in him. And then finally, they got him. And they said when they found him, his oxygen levels were so low that if he was there even 5 more minutes, he probably would have died. The thing about this story is I know none of us ended up in the ocean in Guam, suffocating. But I have a gut feeling as I heard that story that there's people here tonight that know what that's like spiritually. You see, there's a line in our life sometimes that we know that we shouldn't get close to that line, that sin, whether it's drugs or alcohol or some relationships that are just bad for us, or just this feeling of just being jealous all the time, or just this anger that just bursts out of us. And there's this line that we know we don't want to get too close to. But for whatever reason, occasionally, some of us kind of just whimper close to the line, and before you know it, we're in way over our heads spiritually. And it feels like we're drowning. You try to catch your breath and you try to get motivation to fight against a sin that's just wreaking havoc in your life. But it's every time you start to fight and you let go, you notice that it just slowly pushes you further and further away to the point where you want to quit. Jesus said, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. But there's some people in here who know what it's like not to feel free. Who kind of know what it's like to kind of be enslaved by something in their life. That's just stealing their freedom. It's really hindering your walk with Jesus. You can't embrace God's grace because you're just so full of guilt and shame. You can't feel close to God because every time you try to come to a place like church or you open your Bible, all you just feel is the thing in your life that's destroying you. And the Bible says about people who are living in sin, it says that you literally become a slave to sin. And that sounds extreme, right? But think about it. Some people in here know what it's like to battle with addiction. Some people here right now maybe be battling with addiction, with alcohol, or with certain drugs, or pain medications, or pornography. You see, so many of the things that your life has been taking you to do are things that you never want to do. So many things that you're thinking about and focusing on, you would never want to be focusing on. Sin destroys God's plan for your life if you let it wreak havoc. Sin makes you so selfish, if you realize. When you're doing things that you know are wrong, whether it's you're in a relationship, you're pursuing kind of physical intimacy with people, and you know that God has a strong standard at what He calls you to do. Imagine how many people that you hurt, maybe unintentionally, just trying to seek that self-gratification. Or if you're addicted to drugs or alcohol and you're chasing after those things, imagine the people that are in your life that are just getting those effects of the bad decisions that you're making. There's some people here today, maybe it's not the outward sin like addiction or, those kind of things that are easily saying, oh, I don't do that. But maybe just envy has just destroyed your life, You can't be happy with what God has for you because you're constantly looking at other people and you'd be like, I should be at that level right now. Oh, I should be making this much money right now. Oh man, I should find a guy or a girl that good looking and that cool. I should have that relationship. And it starts to poison your walk with God so much that it actually entraps you because you can't get out of your head. It starts to enslave you. And there's some people here today who have the anger just burst out of them because maybe you've been hurt. Maybe someone's really betrayed you and you just see, and there's some times in your life that just the anger just bursts out of you and it hurts the people closest to you. And that anger, you just can't control it anymore. It's like a pet lion that just you carry around in your life. So my question is, what are we to do when Jesus says, whom the Son sets free is free indeed? But you're here and you find out that you feel like you're just suffocating, you're drowning. There's nothing freeing about the way that you've been fighting what you're fighting. But at the same time, there's some people here today who are like, Freed, what the heck are you talking about? He's like, I do what I want to do, I'm happy. You can't tell me I'm not free because, I'm doing things that you think are wrong or the Bible says are wrong. But if that's you here, sitting here today, I want to really ask you, when you lay your head at night, do you really feel peace about the things that you're doing in your life? When you lay your head at night, do you just have pure joy, feeling like you are doing what you were called and designed to do? That you're fulfilling the purpose that some being had for you? Could you lay your head at night and say, yup, that's me? And we're going to dive into the scripture to kind of wrestle with this whole really hard topic to kind of face. But this is the moment before we move forward that I just want to challenge you, if you're in this room and there's something that's going on in your heart that's really just kind of hurting you and wrecking you, and something that you just feel is kind of distancing you from God. Anything in our life, right, that pushes us away from God, and you can tell there's certain things in our life that do that because they are the things that cause you so much guilt and shame when you think about being close to Christ. There's so many of my friends, like if I went to church, I would feel like I would get burned down, right? So basically what you're saying is the things that you're doing in your life, you're putting them at a higher pedestal than the importance of being in a relationship with God. And that could be relationships that you know are not honoring God. That could be mindsets. That could be actions. But if that's you tonight, I just want to challenge you just to close your eyes and say, God, this is my moment between me and you. No one has to know about it. Just please, Lord, speak to my heart. Revive whatever needs to be revived in my heart. Bring to awareness what needs to be brought to awareness in my heart. Let me be vulnerable just once. Let me zone into what you have for me just once. Just open your heart, open your mind, and say, God, speak to me, I'm listening. That's what I just want to really ask you to do tonight before we move forward. So to really wrestle with this whole topic, I'm going to invite everyone who has a Bible or a phone to open up to John chapter 5, verses 1 through 15. And we have it on the stage. So if anyone wants to read along, you can read, okay? In John 1, it says, sometime later, it says, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him laying there and he learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else always goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Listen, get up, pick up your mat and walk." And at once the man was cured, and he picked up his mat and he walked. So I want to explain to you guys what's going on, okay? So there's this like rumored pool, okay, that once in every while, they say an angel comes to the pool and stirs up the pool. And whoever the first one to get into the pool is, can get healed miraculously. This is the hope that these hundreds, imagine all these people in this building are just laying around for that one chance to get into the pool. And in the middle of this, imagine, you think this could be a place of hope? I picture it more as a place of misery. Just a bunch of people suffering in the middle of their misery, just kind of laying there on a far stretch of imagination that one of them can get healed maybe once a month or eventually. Just laying there. And the amazing thing to me where this story starts is that Jesus, the light of the world, Jesus, the God of the universe, the creator, the one who has all honor and power and glory, he cared enough for that one man who's been laying there for 38 years that he went into that darkness. He went into that place of misery. Not because of anything that man did. That man didn't earn God's grace, didn't earn God's forgiveness, didn't earn God's desire to pick him up and see him walk again. But Jesus' eyes were on that man. And what I want to start off tonight by saying to you guys, whoever you are here tonight, I'm telling you that Jesus' eye is on you. And Jesus has been pursuing you and been chasing you, and he's left no cushion unturned, no hill unsearched. He's been fighting for you your whole life. Not because of anything you've done, not because of how great you are or how holy you are or how you cleaned yourself up so much that it was time for God to come into the picture. But because God loved you so much, he sent Jesus here on a rescue mission for you. And Jesus came on a rescue mission for this man. And as that man was laying there, he didn't just lay there in his misery and his brokenness for a little bit of time. He was there for 38 years. Imagine just feeling broken and abandoned and forsaken for 38 years. Imagine not being able to walk for 38 years. But what happens after a long period of time if you're just laying there is your muscles start to break down. Your bones start to get hollow. You start to get contorted. You can't physically walk anymore if you stop walking for so long. So this man was physically powerless to get up. And that's how some of us here feel today. That we're physically powerless to overcome what that is overcoming us in our life right now. And the most amazing thing to me is what Jesus said to the first thing he said to the man. He looked at this man who's sick and hurting, and he said, "Do you want to get well?" That was the first question he asked the man. And that's a really profound question. Of course he wants to get well, right? Who wants to be stuck in a rut their whole life? Who wants to be stuck in darkness and in misery? Who wants to be hurting their whole life? But there was something that Jesus had to get out of that man by asking him, "Do you want to get well?" And that's the question I want to ask anyone here who feels like they're stuck, who feels like they're in over their head, who feels like they're depressed. You have to look at yourself and look at the grace of God and all that God has done for you. And you got to ask yourself, do I even really want to get well? And some of you here today, you're like, why would I not want to get well? Why would this man not want to get well? And I really did some soul searching. And I feel there's a couple things that you have to take into account. The first thing is, maybe that man just had no hope left. There's nothing more hurtful in life than hope that goes to waste. In Psalms it says, hope deferred, I'm going to read it for you. It's Proverbs 13:12. It says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. And in Psalm 143, look at this. It says, the enemy pursues me. He crushes me to the ground. He makes me dwell in darkness like those long dead. What I want to tell you is that the devil takes every opportunity in your life when you start to lose hope to make you say, listen, it's hopeless. Just basically die on the outside. Just give in. Just let the waves crash over you and just start to sink because there's no hope for you. Being disappointed and being disappointed and being disappointed takes the wind out of people's sails to the point where they just don't even want to get better. The other thing I want to say is, instead of actually doing what it takes to get better or pursuing the right things to get better, sometimes it's just easier to surround yourself with people who are going through misery and are stuck in the same rut as you to kind of make you feel better about yourself. Maybe this man was in that pool area for so long, not because he was trying to get better, but just because he just looked around and like, man, look at that man, he's crippled. Oh man, that guy has no legs. I can be as miserable as I want because everyone around me is stuck in the same thing. And as Christians, right, God calls us out of the darkness into the light, right? God calls us out of certain ways of life. Not because, He wants you to be this oh man, this man is so holy. He just knows those things will kill you spiritually. Those things will rob the purpose that God has for your life if you let it fester. Those relationships will break you. That way of thinking about envy and what this guy has and what I don't have, that will rob you of your gratefulness and your joy and your hope. But as Christians, and even not as Christians, are you surrounding yourself with people even more miserable than you, more stuck than you, that kind of be an excuse and a way out, to kind of fight to feel better? And the last thing I really thought about is, when that man was there by the pool, and Jesus asked him, he said, do you want to get better? You know what his response was? Man, the water was stirring. Nobody lets me in the water. No one pushes me in the water. Man, I've tried. It's just not working for me. It's so easy when you're in a rut and your life's an absolute disaster to just want to do nothing and then hope for a miracle helicopter to come swoop you up out of the waters. It's so much easier to say, oh man, nobody came and prayed for me, man, nobody came and fed me the Bible, and I don't feel good. Nobody came and said, this is what's wrong with your life, this is what you got to do, this is what you got to do, follow me, let's go. It's so easy to not want the responsibility of letting God come into your life, entering into every avenue into your life and cleaning you up and restoring you for what He has for you, rebuilding you in the wreckage and the rubble. And my desire for tonight, by bringing this question, do you want to get better, is I want you guys to ask yourself, if you're stuck right now, do I want to get better? And if you say, yes, I want to get better. Yes, it's obvious I want to get better. Jesus, please, enter my life. Help me, restore me to what you have for me. Jesus, please rescue me from this mess that I'm entangled in. Jesus, please take me out of where I'm at. I want to ask you a follow-up question. Are your actions lining up with the desire to be restored by God? You have to be real with yourself sometimes. Man, I don't want to be addicted to drugs anymore. I don't want to be addicted to pain pills. Man, I don't want to be watching pornography. It's ruining the way I look at girls. I don't want to be sleeping around and hurting these people. I don't want to be doing things that God doesn't want me to be doing. But at the same time, there's no changes you're making in your life for God to be able to enter into your situation. You're not going to anywhere for God to speak into your life. You're not committed to a church. You're not committed to a Bible study. You're not committed to praying and reading the Bible like you need food. You need something from there. How do you expect this all of a sudden to get out of the rut? And what I want to tell you is when I said that Jesus said, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. I want to make a really clear point for you. That man was powerless to get past the sin and brokenness in his life. Right? So many times in our own ability, in our own will, in our own desire, we are broken. Right? There's times where we have the will and the strength and the motivation to get out of these things. But at the same time, we also don't have it all the time. And the thing is, Jesus empowered that man to get up and walk. When Jesus comes into a hopeless situation, He brings hope. When He comes into an impossible situation, He makes it a possible situation. And that's where I want to start with. What am I supposed to be doing? You're saying, Fried, are my actions lining up? What are the actions I'm supposed to be taking? And the first thing I want to tell you is, whoever you are, wherever you are, no matter how far away you feel from God, I'm telling you, Jesus entered this horrible, hurtful, broken world and suffered on behalf of you on a rescue mission so He can hold you and call you His son forevermore. The first thing we can do, no matter how broken we are and how messed up our lives have become, is to say, Jesus, I know you died on the cross to forgive me for all my wrongdoings. I please want to invite you into my heart and start something new into my heart. Start something new into my situation. Maybe you are a Christian and you have accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior. Maybe just take a minute and say, Jesus, I invite you to take control of this relationship. Jesus, I invite you to take control of my mindset and my hurts. Lord, I invite you to help me forgive these people. Lord, in Jesus' name, Lord, I invite you into every aspect of my life so that you can restore me to what you want from me. And that's the second applicable thing you guys can do. I want to ask you a simple question. How many windows have you opened in your life for God to be able to speak to you? I've learned in my short life, that to really let God in, God is knocking on every door possible. Okay? God is knocking on your relationships. He's knocking in your personal life. He's knocking on your dreams, through music, through friends. But so often, we're so doing our own thing that it's like we don't give God any avenue to actually come through and speak to us. There's so many of us here today who aren't committed to going to church once a week. Once a week, you're telling me for an hour or two you can't go and let God speak to a man whose passion and purpose is to take care of a group of people and bring them closer to Christ. We're not going to commit to going to church and sitting there and watching this man who just has the desire to shepherd you. Maybe speak into your life. Maybe meet people in church that will kind of take you alongside in their life and walk you forward to where God has for you. You're telling me that in the middle of your hopelessness and your rut and your depression and this sin just wreaking havoc on your relationships and your life, you're not willing to spend time every day just opening God's living word to maybe let God speak to you? Or maybe just stopping what you're doing throughout the day and just saying, God, and just praying to Him and talking to Him about what's going on in your life and what you feel powerless over. You're saying you're struggling and your environment's bringing you down and you don't have anyone to help you get closer to Christ. Why are you not pursuing small groups and community and people that can pour into you? Or you see someone who you look up to in their faith, why don't you go up to them and say, hey, I need help? If you really want to get better, and you say you want to get better, why not go to the places and the people that can help you here and get closer to Christ, to get better? The last thing I want to say about that is that if you really want to get better, you got to have to realize that it's going to cost you something. You see, when people want to get better from addiction, alcohol, pain medications, even marijuana, cocaine, all these things that they kind of change the chemistry in your brain. They change things. Nobody grows up wanting to be an addict. You know what I'm saying? Nobody grows up saying, I want to be this angry man who just abuses people. I want to be this man who wakes up one day and I'm just so envious of everything in my life. Or you're a girl no one wants to grow up and be so self-conscious and kind of hate themselves. Almost not even want to love God because of how much you don't love yourself. Nobody in here wants to, grow up one day and just kind of lose respect for themselves in a sense. And just let themselves go. Nobody grows up with that intention in mind. But sin creeps in, sin steps in, one decision, two bad decisions, and before you know it, you're in a totally different path. There's a famous quote that says, sin takes you further than you want to go, makes you stay longer than you want to stay, and makes you pay more than you want to pay. I'm going to say it one more time. Sin takes you further than you want to go, makes you stay longer than you want to stay, and makes you pay more than you want to pay. But in the same regards, as God is going to restore us and heal us and bring us to where He wants us to be, so we can be free from all the things that are just tethering us down to the earth. Our flesh is going to hurt. It's going to physically cause pain sometimes. It's going to mentally cause pain sometimes. And you got to be able to resist sin to the point where that part of you starts to slowly die. And I use the word die because that's what the Bible says. You have to die to sin. There's a part of us that's the spirit that Jesus is living in us and restoring us. And there's this fleshly part of us that just aches to be gratified and happy and just the simple rushes, and they wage war against each other. And what you feed will thrive, and what you starve will die. So as you start to feed that part of you, it grows stronger and stronger and gets more in the forefront of your mind, and the spiritual side of you starts to die and die and die. But in the reverse, you got to actually be willing to go through pain. You got to let God cost you some friendships and some relationships and some habits and some parties, and some Saturday night activities and some people on your phone and some freedom, so God can restore you to where you need to be. In the Bible, in Matthew 5, verses 29 and 30, it says, "If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown in hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go to hell." That's a very, very strong verse. I never imagined preaching with those verses, okay? Sometimes God just, challenges you to share things that you're like, okay, man, I don't know how it's going to be taken, but I'm going to put it out there. The point I want to make to you guys is this, right? If you really want to get better, you got to have to know that sometimes your will fail you. Sometimes your flesh will fail you. Sometimes you will actually go out of your way while you're trying to recover to do the wrong things to take a couple steps back. So if you really want to get better, you know what you should do? Figure out ways that even when your will fails you, that God can protect you. And there's a lot of different examples of this. Like if there's certain relationships in your life that you know are just absolutely toxic, maybe share with a close friend. Have them check up on you and keep you accountable. Maybe you got to remove that person and block them from your phone. Maybe you got to block them from your computer. Say you are searching after highs, whatever drug it is, it doesn't matter, But instead of trying to fight it on your own, why not have people help you and delete those contacts from you? Maybe even lose your phone for a month. Maybe, delete social media for a month just to get yourself away from it. Because you'll always be able to find a way to sin. But if you really don't want to sin, you're going to help God help you find ways to protect yourself, that even when you want to sin, you physically can't. To close out this story, actually, it's like, Jesus talks to this man and says, "Do you want to get better?" And Jesus heals this man. Jesus comes into the moment and he lifts this man's spirits and he sets this man off into the world. And at the end of that story, which really caught my attention, is John 5, verses 14 and 15. It says, "Later Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, 'See, you are well again.'" Look what he says. "Stop sinning or worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jewish leaders that Jesus had made him well, tried to get Jesus in trouble. The point I want to make is that sin has physical consequences. And if it's up to the devil will use whatever sin has a stronghold in your life to physically destroy you, to destroy your relationships, to destroy your peace, to destroy what God's purpose is for your life. If you guys don't watch out, and you're like, remember I said that in the waters, in those high waves, he was drowning. If he was there for 5 minutes longer, it could have killed him. How much longer are you willing to let just float in that water and suffer and drown? Maybe, who knows what life can do, what life can throw you, what could happen. How much longer are you willing to let sin write the end of your story? How much longer are you willing to let sin write the end of your relationships, of your purpose, of your career path, of your mindset, of your freedom? And to close, I'm going to invite Ben to the stage and the worship team to play some music for us. And I'm going to tell you guys a story, okay? Anyone ever heard of a guy named Bob Sorge? Some people do. Everyone go to basic conference like back in college time? Nobody? Okay. This man was a worship pastor and a pastor. So he preached and sang every Sunday for many, many years. He was the pastor of a really successful, blossoming church. He was doing everything right, okay? He was giving God his all. He had a great relationship with God, a great relationship with his family. He was pouring his life and everything that he had into his congregation. But one day, he started to feel like this weird feeling in his throat. It was like a marble was stuck in his throat. So he got a little concerned. He went to a ear, nose, and throat doctor, and they looked at his throat, and they said, "You have a tumor actually in your throat. You have this polyp that's just growing on your vocal cords." And it started to cause him dryness. He couldn't cause him some discomfort when he would preach and when he would sing. So he started to pursue medical help. He went to the doctor. They said, okay, we're going to laser the polyp off. You should have your full recovery. The pain shouldn't bother you anymore. Jordan, give me some keys, man. There we go. So then what happened was they lasered it off, right? But to his surprise, when they lasered off the polyp in his vocal cords, things got 100 times worse. His voice didn't get better. It actually got way raspier. People could hardly hear what he was saying. And every time he tried to talk, anytime he tried to sing, he had the worst pain he's ever had in his life. And that pain just started to linger. And that pain began to take over. And he was suffering, okay? He tried to do whatever he could do to help him heal his throat, what was going on in his life. And he said, what do you do when you can't quit, but you can't keep going on? And he started to feel like he was suffocating in his life. That he would try to go through the motions of going through church, but he would have so much pain, he would have so much discomfort, so much discouragement, that he said he could barely breathe during the service. That he started almost not even wanting to go to church anymore. And for a period of time, his pastoral staff saw that he was hurting and said, you could step down for a little bit. You could just kind of heal. Take 6 months and just heal. Take 6 months and just kind of let God restore your voice and restore your passion. So he started going to church with his family once a week. And he said he couldn't even do it anymore. He was exhausted. And he said, I needed to hear from God. I needed God to come into my situation and give me something. So one day, he had enough. And he sat down and he started opening his Bible and just reading his Bible. And he was looking for just something, some type of assurance. Something, just something, God, give me something. And he was flipping the pages and he just didn't find anything there. And then he just started praying. He didn't just pray like, a simple word to prayer. He started pouring his heart out before God. And he started praying and praying and praying and pouring his heart out. And he still didn't feel any relief in his throat. And he just started to bow his head and he just broke down crying. And he started to feel like he was abandoned. That God had forsaken him. That God was done with him. That his story was finished. And he just started sobbing and sobbing. And he just reached that point where he felt like he couldn't breathe anymore spiritually. And then he got fed up. And he said, you know what I'm going to do? He had 4 kids. He said, if I'm going to be in misery, my kids are going to have the best time of their life. So he closed his Bible. He got up. He got his 4 kids. He said, we're going to a baseball game. Okay? So he took his 4 kids. His kids don't know what's going on. They're excited. He said, we're going to go to a baseball game. He bought them popcorn. He bought them hot dogs. He bought them slush puppies. Whatever they wanted, he got them fingers. And whatever they wanted, he got them. And he just was sitting there miserable. And he was looking up to God in the middle of the stands, saying, God, are you done with me? Is my story finished? Am I forsaken? Am I abandoned? What's going on? And he just kept crying out to God. And he said he heard a really loud voice screaming at him that you're abandoned. You're forgotten. God doesn't want anything to do with you. Your story's done. Your purpose is done. It's okay to just give in to the darkness. It's okay to be hopeless because your situation's hopeless. But at the same time, he started to hear a whisper in the background. And the whisper said, I'm not done with you yet. I didn't forget about you. I love you. I chose you. But the loud voices just kept echoing in his head and he just couldn't get them out of his head. So he just sat there and he's like, God, he's like, I know theologically I'm a pastor. This is not the way we should be talking to you. But he said, if you could, just give me a sign. Right? He said, God, just let them hit a baseball at me to let me know that you haven't forgotten about me. And he started saying, this is wrong. Like, don't even think like that. This is not the way you should be talking to God. He said, don't ever test God. He said, but he said, God, will you let me catch a baseball? Just show me you're not finished with me yet. And then as he started letting that thought just like reverberate in his head, he started looking around the room. And he just saw thousands of people around the stadium. And he started to think about, man, what is the chances that a ball could even land on me? Like, this is ridiculous stuff. And then he looked above him, and there's even a bleacher and a balcony over his head. He's like, there's no way a baseball can come to me, even if it wanted to come to me. And he just sat there and those loud voices were plaguing him. And then all of a sudden, in the next inning, he heard a... And the ball started coming. And of course, the ball was coming nowhere near him. And he looked around and he saw thousands of people standing up with their gloves in the air. And he just sat there. And you know what happened? That baseball bounced off the balcony, hit him right in his chest, and fell on his daughter's lap. And he just started crying. He said that day he heard God's voice clearly telling him, let me finish your story. I'm not done with you yet. I have not forsaken you or forgotten you. You are not condemned. Let me write the rest of your story. And that's where I want us to end. Jesus said, I've come to set the captives free. He says, whom I've set free are free indeed. I just want to let you guys know, don't let sin finish your story. Invite God in this moment to say, God, I really want to get better. Help me be free. Free to run after you. Free not to let guilt and shame weigh me down. Free to live a life that you can do what you designed for me to do. And what's going to happen right now is we're going to get into like a worship song just to close the night out. But I really want to take this opportunity for you guys in the crowd to say, this is talking to you in any way. Or maybe you came here with a friend that you know is really struggling. I want to invite you guys to stay where you are for a second. And just pray. Pray together if you want to. We're going to have some people from our prayer team come up to the front. Just to let someone speak to you. And to get what's on your heart off your heart. And let us pray with God into your situation. Alright guys. You guys can take it away.